Good afternoon, everybody. This is Tara Kelly with the Patent East office, and welcome to our final installment of our Deaf, Hard of Hearing Hour with the Expert for our 2021-2022 school year. And we will give just a moment to allow everybody else to filter in, and then we will get started. Okay, so our overview for today. Today we are talking about the Attract, Prepare, Retain initiative, or the APR initiative, that the Bureau of Special Education is currently emphasizing throughout our state. And with us today from our Pittsburgh office for Patent, we will have Carol Good and Christine Moon talk with us a bit about the APR initiative and what is involved with that, ways that you might be interested in participating. And then when Carol and Christine are done sharing their information, then myself and Dr. Jennifer Craig from our Patent Pittsburgh office will be sharing some deaf, hard of hearing specific considerations that we may all want to think about for the APR initiative. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to introduce Carol Good and Christine Moon from our Patent Pittsburgh office. Thank you so much, Carol and Christine.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tara and Jen, for inviting us to join you this afternoon. It's quite a pleasure to be speaking with you on a topic that is clearly one that is of great interest to so many, given the complexities of the school year and the crises that we are seeing with regards to the shortages with special education personnel. I'd like to introduce my colleague who's across the screen from me here, Christine Moon. Christine is the state lead for this work on Attract, Prepare, and Retain, and I appreciate her being here with us this afternoon. Christine, you want to give a little bit of a background on who you are and the work that you do?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to be here with you all today. And as Carol said, I am the state lead for this work. I actually began this in September. And we have filled our time with a lot of learning and growing and deciding what we as a state need to do to better situate ourselves so that we can once again be the creators of excellent educators in Pennsylvania. We have exported too many. So at this point, we need to keep what we have and begin to grow some new ones that will look at the next generation as good educators in our field. So that's what we're here to talk to you about today. And I'm actually going to turn it back over to Carol to go over some slides with you. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Christine. So as she mentioned, Christine Moon, state lead for Attract, Prepare, Retain out of the West office, and I'm the assistant director of the West office as well. How convenient that we are together, correct? So let's begin. What is this Attract, Prepare, Retain, and what is it that you should know about this specific work that's happening in Pennsylvania? Well, as you know, Carol Clancy and Amy Pastoric joined our Pennsylvania Bureau of Special Education back in the summer of 2019. So we're coming up on about 3 years as to them at the helm for our Bureau of Special Education. And it was at that time they started to talk to us in the patent system, intermediate unit system, and somewhat at the local education agency levels about Attract, Prepare, and Retain. And it was earmarked at that point as a priority that they were committing to, as it aligns with the work that's happening at the federal level as well in the Office of Special Education Programming. If you do a Google search on Attract, Prepare, Retain, you're going to find a plethora of information that comes or emanates from OSEP under the direction of Laurie Vanderplug, who was once their special ed director for OSEP. But as we know, with all that occurred over 2020, 21, with the pandemic, the shift in focus had to naturally go to FAPE and LRE for our students with disabilities. We needed to ensure that they were receiving that high quality education, regardless if they were virtual or in person, and all hands were on deck with regards to attending to those moments in time. And so APR kind of took a back seat at that point. But as Christine mentioned in the opening, when she came on board officially as the state lead in September, we then got together on a weekly basis of the Bureau, Carol Clancy, Amy Pastoric, along with two Bureau advisors, Tim Krasinski and Jeanette Alexander, the director of Pat and West, Paula Schmidt, and myself. And we came together to discuss a work scope and a vision for coordinating efforts around the attraction, preparation, and retainment of special education personnel. Now, this vision of APR for Pennsylvania goes beyond just our Bureau and just our patent system. So a steering committee has been established to both inform and influence this work, because we know that there is a ton of knowledge, experience, field perspectives that have an impact on what we can and should be doing in Pennsylvania. And we'll look to that steering committee to provide some novel ideas and enhance our work. This work of APR impacts K through 12 LEAs, as well as our institutes of higher education. So we know that we have a lot of work to do, and we have no time to waste, as we recognize the enormity of this situation with regards to vacancies that remain open for our special education personnel. So today I can feature a few things that we've been doing with APR since the onset of the school year. One is a new APR repository. It is a website that we have crafted that will share all things APR. Know that currently it's in its infancy. We are just starting to populate this website with pages on attract, prepare, and retain. But we will get there. We will be every week. I feel as if I'm hitting that publish button and we have new things to add or other things to feature. So be sure to bookmark this link that Jen Craig's going to put in the chat for you in just a minute, which is a Google site for APR, right? So each page, the way that is structured is that it has Pennsylvania specific resources at the top. Then it has some national resources at the bottom. And as I mentioned, we've got those pages: attract, prepare, retain. We also have a page on our steering committee and a high school toolkit. So let me show you that right now so that you have an idea of how to navigate to it and kind of what to focus in on. So here's the landing page, PAAPR home. And so it gives you our focus, which is to ensure that we are attracting skilled, compassionate, and diverse individuals. We're preparing these special ed personnel so that we're building capacity through professional development and technical assistance, and ultimately retaining folks through the long term. So on the next part of this page, we have the special ed personnel shortages in Pennsylvania. And you can see from 13-14 all the way through 19-20, how these shortages in certificates, who's being certified to teach in Pennsylvania, my apologies, 1415 through 1920. So as we see, you know, I was trying to get to the one for, let's see if I can get to one. Speech and language impaired, you know, starting out with 241 back in 1415, now they're down to 50 in 1920. Visually impaired, down to 12. Special ed certification in just the pre-K through 8 is down from about 1,600 down to 900. So you can see these drastic changes. And this is information that we need to have as we think about the programs that we support, those programs for which we need to fill. We don't have a lot of folks to pull from. So what other strategies might we have in place that can help us kind of fill this gap and build up a new cadre of folks to support our students with disabilities? Something that you may find of interest right here on this page is the considerations for utilization of the ESSER, or the elementary and secondary school relief spending. So if you click on this page, it will pop out for you, and then you can see all kinds of novel approaches for using that funding to either attract, prepare, or retain special ed personnel. All of these items had been vetted through our fiscal agency at the Bureau of Special Education, right? So maybe it is we reimburse future or current teachers, administrators who are taking the praxis. Maybe we think about offering a high school elective course on working with teachers and students with disabilities, offer American Sign Language as an elective. That could pique the interest of students that are currently in secondary schools that might then want to pursue a degree or a career in special education, specifically in deaf, hard of hearing, right? There are ways in which during the prepare that we offer internships, set up a mentoring program. So there's a variety of options here on this page for considerations for that ESSER money that we know has been sent out to all districts across Pennsylvania. Then underneath this landing page, we have a piece around make a suggestion. And we really want to hear from the field. Carol and Amy at the Bureau are quite responsive to our stakeholders that, you know, really can give us information about what's happening at the local level. Let us know. You've got some ideas about how we can attract, prepare, retain. Please put those in the suggestion box as we monitor this on a weekly basis. And we bring these up during our APR core team meetings every Friday. So please feel free to put things in there because we will read through them and see what we can act upon. And then underneath are these national resources, right? So every page starts out Pennsylvania resources, the national resources. So these are some pieces of information that might, you know, kind of pique your curiosity. Think about how you could maybe take some of these ideas, use it with your students, use it with your colleagues, use it to inform decisions that are made at your level that can help, again, attract, prepare, retain. There's a toolkit from the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders at American Institutes for Research. There's strategies for recruiting, hiring, and retaining diverse teachers. So again, we're not looking to recreate the wheel. We're looking at what's happening nationally that we might be able to inform or influence to make a difference in Pennsylvania. That's the homepage. But when we get to these other pages here on the left-hand side of the screen, attracting special education personnel might be one that you'd like to come to because we are offering a grant. I'm going to get to the grant in more detail a little bit later in our presentation, but earmark this page, right? This is attracting special education personnel. Know that there is monies available to local education agencies, institutes of higher education that are interested in inspiring that next generation of special educators. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But know that when you come on this page, our request for application, our overview webinar PowerPoint, a PDF of the application, and then all the recordings that would be helpful to you if you're really interested in this grant are here for you, right? So get the overview that Christine did, watch the overview on how to fill out the application if you're an LEA, and then watch the other webinar. And these are short. These are about 10, 15 minutes for these overview webinars. And then, you know, should you have additional questions, you can certainly reach out to Christine or me. And then underneath, these are the national pieces, right? The OSEP, Office of Special Ed Programming, around attracting personnel, learning policy about addressing teacher shortages. So again, good background information, great ideas, and again, things that maybe we want to replicate in our own LEAs. Next page is around preparing special ed personnel. What can we do? And we know through the Patton organization and your intermediate units, and even at the local level, we do a great job of that preparing, that in-servicing, where we, you know, come together in these kinds of formats to provide you information. So we wanted to focus and highlight on this page something that might be of interest to you, which is this Essentials of IEP Writing. The course is running only through May 9th, but there may still be room for you to join if you want to. I mean, it's only April 7th. You still have a little over a month to do this. But this is a course that's offered around how do you write a good IEP. So it takes each section of that IEP and walks you through that with lots of practice. There's some feedback, there are quizzes. It's a Schoology course that we offer, and it'll be offered again next year 3 times. So they usually do it in the fall. Well, I guess maybe late summer, early fall, and then they offer it again winter, spring. So look for it. It's a course that I know has gotten rave reviews because they really get a lot of good practice and they go into such detail around each section of that IEP. And then there are some national resources under here. The Cedar Center is one that you might want to check out. They have a treasure trove of materials relative to APR that might be worth checking out. And I like this particular publication because it talks about what could we do in the short term and what are then some long-term strategies that we might also want to consider. And when we think about retaining special ed personnel, it typically comes to the environment. If folks are feeling supported in their environment, they feel as if they're making a difference in their environment, then they're most likely going to stay and continue on in those roles that they're playing. So we wanted to feature on this page our school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports that's happening that creates that positive school climate. And certainly we know that positive behavior interventions and supports is something that you could learn more of from not only your intermediate unit TAC or those consultants, but you could also reach out to Patton. And we've got a cadre of folks who are training on PBIS, and it really is a system that really helps to influence that school climate. And then underneath there are a few pieces. The IRIS Center, again, another one worth bookmarking. IRIS Center has a ton of professional development modules on special education topics. This one happens to be around teacher retention, but they have a wealth of other modules that you might want to consider perusing as well. If you're curious to know who's on our steering committee, there are 31 members of the steering committee that represent all types of different organizations. These folks were hand-selected by the Bureau as folks they wanted to come and help to inform and influence the work that we're doing around APR. You'll see folks who represent approved private schools. You'll see folks who represent community college, private college, state level universities. We have folks from the Department of Education, from teacher certification, Department of Corrections. We tried to have a variety of folks who can represent LEAs, related service personnel, para-educators, and this group will be coming together probably bi-monthly to prioritize our work and to help us make decisions about how we strategically employ these priorities and in working collaboration with our LEAs. So this list is on here for you to look at. We are in the process of adding their email addresses so that should you know some of these members or want to learn more about them, you would have their email so that you could reach out and contact them. And our final page at the moment is one around high school toolkit. And this might be some new information for you if you're at that secondary level. Like, what can we be doing with our students at the high school level for them to become more involved with students with disabilities and figure out how we could develop that pathway to a career in special education? So there are a few recruiting Washington teachers. They have been working through this for probably the last 8 to 10 years. So they have all kinds of resources that might be of value or interest to you. Educators Rising is a career and tech student organization around getting students at that high school level involved to take classes, to become teachers, to become paras. So that's on here. And then Unified Champion Schools and Best Buddies. So we will continue to build this, like I said, with tons of resources, but this is what we have thus far. Here's your Grow Your Own, right? Where you in-house work with folks, there's a stipend involved, and it's a way to increase the folks within your system to promote them, whether it goes from para to teacher, or it goes from teacher to administrator, but it's Grow Your Own using staff and personnel that you have now to push them into other pathways through support, through monetary means, etc. So that's APR, and that's our website. I'm going to pause for a moment, see if there are any questions anyone wants to ask, or if there's anything, Christine, that you would also like to talk about with regards to the website.
No, I think I was looking at the chat, Carol, and I saw that we had someone wrote down that they'd like to see educational interpreters on that list as well. So absolutely, we know that there's a need for those, and that is something that should be looked at too. So we want to be clear that this is the list that we're looking at right now, but it is rather an all-inclusive list, in that we need to expand that to represent any positions within special education. So please know that while we may be remiss in having that on our list, it is on our bigger list, if you will. So other than that, I think you covered our website well.
Great, so. Thank you. Yeah. You know, what I've found in these brief months that we've been working with the Bureau specifically on our APR is how responsive they have been to whenever we need to make these adjustments. So I'm really pleased that you threw out there around educational interpreters. I was on a call yesterday and someone said, well, what about behavior specialists? Oh yeah, good idea, right? So we know that while the steering committee is set, we also talk about how we may have some ad hoc members that may come in and help to inform specific pieces of the work that we're going to do. So clearly this list, while somewhat developed, is not fully defined, as we will be responsive to the field and we will add folks and ask them to join us maybe in an ad hoc mode, but also to make sure that we're addressing the needs of the field. Okay, APR repository. Hopefully you bookmark it, check back on it, and put things in the suggestion box so we can like that one, we can take to our APR core team and work through that. All right, next piece is our very first APR grant. And we talked about this at the PDE conference, our annual state conference that happened in early March. And there was great interest in this grant. And so much so that we had some folks from higher ed that were at the conference, and they said, we also inspire the next generation of special ed teachers. Why isn't this grant open for us? And we said, oh, you're right. Let's see if there is a way that we can incorporate higher ed into this grant opportunity. And we have. So this grant opportunity is open for secondary and post-secondary students in ways that we can help to inspire them to become special educators. Now, we know that if we had an opportunity to open up mics and to hear from all of you, most people working in the field of special education had some definitive experience that led them to pursue this career and to work with students with disabilities. And our bureau directors really wanted us to begin this work of APR with our secondary students so that we can almost do a grow your own, where we help to support these students in really thinking about pursuing careers in special education. So secondary students might mean middle school students, junior high students, or our traditional high school students. And like I said, post-secondary. So if you're on with us today and you work in any of those secondary schools, let's think about what questions might you have with regards to this grant, and think about if this might be something that you would like to pursue. But this grant opportunity has the potential to provide students with an examination per se of a variety of career pathways, from paraprofessional to teachers, speech therapists, school psychologists, low incidence teachers. But a lot of schools we know have informal, right, peer supports, such as a lunch buddies or maybe even tutoring. Some people might have Special Olympics or best buddies. But what we want to do is do two things. We want to promote special ed career pathways, and we want to either develop or enhance learning experiences where students without disabilities have authentic, experiential opportunities to work with students with disabilities. So that's really the essence of this grant. It's called Developing Future Special Educators, and it's for, again, secondary students or post-secondary students. Now, what's contained or involved in this grant, it's things for you to know, is that the grant will run from July of this year, 2022, all the way through June of 2024. So it's a 2-year grant. The funding available is $25,000 for those 2 years. So if you were to apply for the full $25,000, you would be eligible for 12.5 of that money in year one, and then 12,500 for the second year. So we'll split those monies up that way. But a couple of things that we do. We want to engage those students or post-secondary students to work with students with disabilities. We want the LEA or the Institute of Higher Ed or a consortium to work through and implement LEA or IHE specific national or international programs, right? So you may have a lunch buddies. And right now it's kind of an informal opportunity for students with and without disabilities to spend some time socializing. Well, let's enhance that program by adding in a layer of career pathway development for those students to think about the careers that are available working with students with disabilities, giving them opportunities to know what colleges or universities in the area have programs to develop special ed personnel, what classes they could take at the high school level or at the post-secondary level that would ready them for those careers. There will be professional development that will be offered to those involved in the grant. We know the importance of person-first language, presuming competence, universal design for learning, and secondary transition are all key components to professional development that we would like to work with the grant coordinators and their teams throughout the course of the 2 years, so that as we teach those topics will then in turn be taught to our secondary or post-secondary students involved in this grant. Again, to give them that background knowledge, to build their comfort level and confidence in working with students with disabilities. And then certainly that career pathway development, which might look different depending on the grant. Now, the Bureau is really pushing for creative, innovative ways in which we can engage secondary and post-secondary students in this work. They're talking about consortiums where an LEA might partner with another LEA because one of them has a really good summer academy that they do with students with and without disabilities. So they want to partner that way. They'll share the monies and they'll work through that together. Or maybe you know of a college or a university or community college in your area that might be a great partner because they could help you with that career pathway development because you already have a really good learning experiential learning opportunity that you could pair with that. So think about all of the different ways in which you might be able to utilize these funds, but also in an effort to really inspire that next generation of educators. The grants are due, the applications are due on Friday, April 22nd. I know that that feels like that's a quick turnaround, but I promise if you go onto that APR website and you look at the application, you listen to the overview webinar, I really feel as if you would be able to address the components of the grant's priorities. Right? It is the vision for why you want to be considered for this grant. What are those experiential learning opportunities and who would be involved? I promise you that I feel confident that you would be able to walk through that grant application and complete it. So let me take you back to the APR repository and just share with you what that grant application looks like, right? So attracting special ed personnel is the page that I want to go to. Jen put into the chat the home page, but this one is the attracting special ed personnel. When you come here and you click on apply now, it's going to take you to our platform that's collecting our grant application. If you've ever completed something for Patton through a form site, it's going to most likely remember your credentials. So for me, I would have to remove my username and password and create a whole new profile for myself. And that's what this note up here tells you. So you don't get too far if you click on that apply now. And we knew that. So that's why we have down below a PDF of the application. Click on that little arrow, takes you out, and it takes you right into what that application looks like. It gives you the outcomes that we're looking for. It talks about how monies will be awarded. We need one educator at the secondary or post-secondary level that's going to oversee the professional development, kind of serve as someone who's going to lead this work. But we also know that monies would be awarded by providing secondary or post-secondary students education on future job opportunities that exist in the field of special education. $25,000 available for 2 years. And so it's literally walks you through all of the required fields that you would have through this application. Some of these have logic behind them. So if you were to type in that you were an LEA, it would then just give you the LEA specific information. You might be wondering, well, what type of LEA is eligible to actually apply for this grant? Approved private schools, charter schools, cyber charter schools, intermediate units, career tech centers, as well as school districts are eligible for this funding. As far as institutes of higher ed, private, public, 2 or 4 year. So it's open to a large group of folks. We wanted to cast that net as wide as we could to give them opportunities for these grants. Once grants come in towards the end of April, we have a team of about 25 folks from Patton who will score these grants. Then we will make some decisions alongside the Bureau, and applicants will know by the end of May whether or not they will be funded and be able to participate in this grant opportunity. And then we'll hold a meeting in June and folks can get started in July. Anyone who receives funding will have a Patton point of contact that will be available to provide technical assistance, answer questions, and connect you with resources that would help you in whether develop or refine some of this work that you're doing. So there's the grant application. And like I had mentioned, we have below the overview webinar that Christine did for us, and then an overview of the different applications if you're an LEA or an institute of higher ed, because they vary just a little bit. So we're super excited about this. A question that we often get is, well, how many grants are available? And our answer is, we don't know, because we're not sure how many applications we'll receive and how many are going to be creative and out of the box and really try to impact as many students as possible and inspire them to get in the field of special education. As I mentioned before, the Bureau is really responsive. So if we have a ton of applications that really show a lot of promise, kind of feel as though the Bureau may say, let's fund as many of these as we can. So we do not have a specific ceiling set for how many grants, how much funding is available. That's going to be determined based on the interest that folks show with regards to these applications. Christine is listed as our contact for the grant, so please feel free to reach out to her. We'll make sure that we get you her email address so that you have access to contacting her should you want to talk further about the grant. That's what I had on my agenda today, to talk to you about this repository, to talk to you about this grant opportunity. But know that this work of APR is going to be taking hold this summer. I can foreshadow a few of the projects that within the Patton system we will be targeting with regards to APR. We're going to be launching a mentoring program for special ed teachers, for related service providers. We're looking at doing some coaching. We're also looking at networking and professional learning communities so that we can help to retain folks that are in their current positions, attract folks to this work, and ensure that they feel that they have the skills and resources needed in order to do their jobs to the best of their ability. So be on the lookout for additional things that come your way around APR because it will be coming kind of fast and furious over the next few months. I'm going to leave this slide up here for you. Again, my name's Carol Good. You can reach me at this email address on here, thepattonpgh.net, and my colleague Christine Moon is also listed here as well. And I think I'm going to turn it over to you, Tara and Jen, and stay on should you have any questions.
Carol, before you go, this is Tara. We did have one question in the Q&A, and I think it's a good one just to clarify. So for example, if there is a school district that currently has a program that allows paraprofessionals to earn degrees and teacher certifications, but let's say, for example, that current program does not offer any options for deaf education, they have not partnered with any universities that have deaf education training programs, would this grant be an option if that school district wanted to apply to be able to fill that gap?
Okay, so School District of Philadelphia partnering with, uh, tell me again, Tara.
So basically, the School District of Philadelphia has a current program that they have partnered with specific universities to allow paras to earn degrees or teaching certification if they already have a degree. But unfortunately, none of the schools of that program currently offer deaf education as an option. So the question was, would this grant program be a possibility if they wanted to apply for it to fill that gap?
Yeah, so excellent question and excellent idea. But what we're focusing on are students, right? So not paras, not folks who already have positions. We'll have other grants that are coming out to address the para to teacher pipeline or teacher to administrator pipeline, but this is students. So if there's a way School District of Philadelphia wants to partner and really enhance that work around deaf education and make contacts that way, perfect, as long as the education is going to be around students or post-secondary students, but not already teachers or those who are already working in the field. This is for our pre-service. This is for folks who have no credentialing or college degrees behind them. This is for folks who are just getting started.
Great, thank you so much for clarifying. And another question just came up. It says, if a college already has a special education program, could the grant help to set up a play group where special needs EI students come to the campus and college students get exposure to children with all different types of disabilities?
Yes, 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 right? That's a perfect example of how an institute of higher education could show how they could enhance a program they already have. But for those students who are going to be working it with those EI students, not only is that important, that play group, but also, hey, students, think about all of these career options. Let's get you set up. Here are some courses you need to take. Let's get you connected with these advisors, right? We need to see that connection, not only just in that experiential learning opportunity, but also that career pathway development. And so those are questions that would be in the grant that they could address, but that's perfect. And I often talk about an experience that I had when I was at the University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown. We did tutoring, right? I was already in the School of Education. I was committed. But this tutoring opportunity was open to anyone on campus who was interested in tutoring. So those students who might have a strong math background, or students who just like to, build rapport with younger students could join us in that tutoring. They didn't have to be education majors. But that would be a program where University of Pittsburgh at Johnstown could say, we're going to capitalize on that program. We're going to redefine it a little bit so that we try to structure it and provide kids who are already in some maybe undecided programs to maybe push them over to consider opportunities in special education and that pathway for them.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And once again, we'd really like to thank both Carol and Christine for being with us today. We appreciate you both taking the time to explain to us the intricacies of the Attract, Prepare, and Retain initiative with the Bureau of Special Education. And again, the link to that website is in the chat. We will make sure to share it again before the end of the afternoon today. So now Jen Craig and I are going to share just a little bit of information that's more deaf, hard of hearing specific when we are thinking around Attract, Prepare, Retain issues for our field. The first thing that I think it's important for us to remember is that in the state of Pennsylvania, we are actually very fortunate that we do have preparation programs for the professionals that work with our students. That is not the case for a lot of our surrounding states. personally, I came from the state of Delaware before I was here in Pennsylvania, and we are not as fortunate there with our preparation programs. So for our teachers of the deaf, hard of hearing here in Pennsylvania, we've got Bloomsburg University. St. Joseph's University has their program, which is a master's degree program, but it is also online. So that's often very convenient for working professionals. And then also Edinburgh University now has a program for deaf education. Jen, would you like to talk a little bit about the educational audiology options?
Sure. As of right now, there are 3 programs for educational audio. Well, actually, it's just clinical audiology. Salus, Bloomsburg, and the University of Pittsburgh. And I think one thing, as a former educational audiologist, that it's really important for educational audiologists to do in this field is take the students that are going to be in a clinical setting and let them have an experience in a school setting, whether that be an intermediate unit, an APS, show them that side of it so we don't lose all of those audiologists or even speech language pathologists to the clinical settings out there.
Absolutely. That's an outstanding point. You know, I was very fortunate. My training was at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, NTID, which is at RIT. And that's where I became a teacher of the deaf, hard of hearing. But if it weren't for being able to work with colleagues who mentored me, both when I was becoming a teacher and then later when I worked as an educational interpreter, you know, I really wouldn't have had the support that I needed to become a professional who was able to support my students. So I think that's one of the things that, especially as we unfortunately start to lose a lot of our colleagues to retirement, well-deserved retirement, but retirement nonetheless, it's important that we remember that those of us who have been around a while, we really do need to do what we can to support those who are, you know, maybe just coming into the field or might be career changers, people who are really just getting started, because that support is important. And then also for educational interpreting, you know, here in the eastern region of the state, we have the Community College of Philadelphia. Then there's also, I think more central is Mount Aloysius College and Community College of Community College of Allegheny County. And then also Bloomsburg University has an ITP. So again, Pennsylvania is very fortunate to have all of these training programs, as well as several speech language pathology programs, and, you know, having SLPs who do get that experience with deaf, hard of hearing students is very important. So now when we think through considerations that are deaf, hard of hearing specific, when we're thinking about attract, prepare, and retain for our field, when Jen and I were planning for today, one of the things that we kept coming back to in our conversation was the importance of our scope of practice in our field. You know, I think it's always been something that's been an important issue, but in recent years, as we have lost practitioners again to retirement and just folks leaving the field for other occupations, we know that our programs have really been squeezed to try to do more with less. And it's just so important to remember that teachers of the deaf, speech language pathologists, educational audiologists, our educational interpreters, our paraprofessionals, you know, we all swim in the same pool, but we all have different roles. And there's a reason that we have different roles. So just making sure that, you know, we support people in feeling valued and in making sure that, you know, we support one another and complement each other, but that we are not usurping other people's roles. You know, I can't do as a teacher what Jen does as an audiologist and vice versa. So I think that's really important to remember. The other thing we need to remember is that not all professionals are trained the same. So, you know, there is sometimes an assumption that all teachers of the deaf sign. They don't. I've met many teachers of the deaf who do not sign at all. I've met teachers of the deaf who are fully bilingual, teachers of the deaf who are deaf themselves, teachers of the deaf who are CODAs. Same thing for interpreters, interpreters who are deaf themselves, interpreters who are CODAs themselves, interpreters who are definitely still emerging in their skills. So again, we really need to be mindful that everybody is in a different spot on their journey and may have a different professional development need. And we have to really be looking at that. What would you say about caseloads and travel time, Jen? Because I know we've both done some traveling in our day.
Well, one thing I wanted to go back to when we were talking about scope of practice, I think a very important part of that is education, because a lot of our supervisors don't have a lot of experience in low incidence or sensory disabilities. So educate your people, your supervisors. They may not know that, you know, as an educational audiologist, I shouldn't be teaching a class, or as the TOD, you definitely shouldn't be fitting a piece of equipment. So that's just one thing of communication. Keep the communication open, talk about it, and then reach out for help. I mean, that's the best way is ask for help when it comes down to it. As far as caseloads and travel time, for example, in Southwestern PA, Intermediate Unit 1, if anybody's on here, is 3 counties. So if, for example, this week I visited a school in Fayette County, and it took me an hour and a half to get there from Washington County. So some of the itinerant teachers may be going from a Washington County to a Fayette to a Greene. You may not see more than 3 kids that day, but you've been in the car for 3.5 hours. And your caseload may be 50. So trying to figure out how to get all those kids in a very rural, large area can be very challenging. So that's something we really need to keep in mind.
Yeah, I definitely agree, Jen, as both a former teacher and an early interventionist, and then also being a former administrator. I think that's one area in our field, especially, where we really could stand to make some changes. I think because, again, you know, we all swim in that same pool of serving deaf, hard of hearing students and deafblind students, for that matter. You know, some of the understanding around how our professionals function, you know, our colleagues who are speech language pathologists, in some instances, may only work at 1 or 2 school sites because they are able to see caseloads of 50 or 60 students. Sometimes they're able to group students. Sometimes they're able, you know, to do their service provision in ways that teachers of the deaf, hard of hearing and educational audiologists and interpreters are not. You know, we really do have to cover a lot more territory. And because of the unique needs of our students, it's very rare that we're able to see students in groups. So I think that's another thing to be mindful of. One more thing that came to mind when you were talking about people knowing the scope of their role. Also, you know, something that we see occasionally is this thought that teachers of the deaf can substitute for educational interpreters, or educational interpreters can substitute for teachers of the deaf. That's not how that works. You know, we have different training and different certifications. So we really need to be mindful of that, that's really not the way we need to be doing things. And we need to really be making sure that we have plans in place for how we support and serve our students. Also, the communication plan. I know this is a constant sticking point for folks in our field. To make things easier for everyone, we need to be completing our communication plans for our deaf, hard of hearing and deafblind students. It's required for our school age students, but it really should be done for all of our students, says the early interventionist at heart. You know, and it needs to be done at the beginning of IEPs and team meetings, not at the end. If it's done at the beginning, it really can help to lead the discussion. And I think, you know, just as an itinerant, what I can say is it can be a very solitary and isolating position. So anything we can do to include our itinerants, no matter what their role, as a part of the team, as a part of the school building, as a part of our programs, is a good thing. And then talking about providing opportunities for our staff, right? What would you say on this list, Jen, are some of the most important things as you've seen it?
I think on this list, I think including your itinerant staff in activities in the school, making them feel part of the school. It's always hard, more difficult to leave a position when you have friends, right? You want to be there, you want to do a good job when you're included with the group. I think that's a really important part. And providing good mentoring and coaching, that's a vital part in developing our younger teachers and making them be confident in what they're doing. You know, it's always better to be in a position where you have other people to lean on and ask questions to. So having good mentoring and coaching is very, very important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's hard to, we hear sometimes from our supervisors and administrators who are from smaller programs that they may only have one teacher of the deaf. And they often will say, well, how do I get them connected with other people so they don't feel so isolated? And especially if the supervisor themselves doesn't come from a deaf, hard of hearing background. Again, this is where leveraging connection to other IUs or other groups in the state, and especially on social media, there's a PA Teachers of the Deaf, Hard of Hearing. There's a PA Interpreters group on Facebook. There's a lot of ways to get folks connected to one another, even if it's not local. We can do that virtually now. That's one of the, I think, silver linings of COVID really, is that it got us all connected. Making sure that we've got access to that continuing education is so important. I know funding is often limited. IUs might be able to provide something, but not always everything. But even just making sure that that time is available. If a staff member needs to leave at a certain time on a certain day to be able to get to a class, that's really important. And then also, making sure that people have the same opportunities that their colleagues do to do extra duty if that's something that they're interested in, being able to be an advisor for a club or a coach for a team. Like Jen said, it's a lot harder to leave a job when you feel a part of the community. I was so blessed when I was teaching to be able to coach a team and be a Girl Scout leader at a school, and that wasn't really common for teachers of the deaf at that point. So anything we can do to help make people part of the community, I think, is a good thing. And I know we're wrapping up, so just to let you all know, we've got about 4 minutes left. And so if you have any questions, feel free to put those into the Q&A or in the chat. And I'm taking a look at a question that's in the Q&A. And it says, yep, something that would promote APR and professional development naturally is community interaction opportunities for students and staff. Consistent social interactions would help develop language, so true, and would also stimulate a connection to the community as a whole and a desire to give back to the next generation. The deaf community used to provide this, but times have changed. I think that investment in this area would go a long way. I couldn't agree more. As somebody who benefited richly from the deaf and deafblind communities, I always say, as somebody who is not a CODA and is not deaf, I, am not of the deaf community, but I was very much with the deaf community and was so fortunate to be taken under their wing, no matter where I lived, and showing up to events and showing up to just various different community activities. I really benefited from that as a hearing person who did not grow up in the community. And so I felt very blessed. And I do think that something has been lost over the years. We've benefited from technology in many ways, but we've also lost some of that interpersonal connection. Those of us who've been around a while who remember deaf clubs and how prevalent that used to be, and the community activities from, in some communities had deaf ministries and things like that. So I agree wholeheartedly, Rich. I think anything we can do to really reach out to communities and make sure that our families know that activities exist and that their kids need to have interaction with other deaf, hard of hearing, deafblind peers, across every type of communication, across every type of setting. I really do think that that can only benefit our students and their families. Absolutely. Are there any other questions or anything else that's come up? All right, well, that being said, here is, let me move this so you can see it. Here is our exit code for today. If you want to scan that QR code, and Jen will also put the link to our survey in the chat. And the exit code for today, we were super creative, is TOD. Again, that exit code is TOD. And thank you all so much. Again, thank you to Christine Moon and Carol Good from Patton Pittsburgh for being with us. Big thanks to Jesse Lee from DHCC for our communication access this year. He's been absolutely amazing. We truly appreciate it. Thank you to Andy Rotondo and the Patton East Tech team for always being with us to support our tech needs. And thank you to all of you for sticking with us and being part of our Hour with the Expert series this year. We appreciate it, and we will absolutely be back next year with more Hour with the Expert. Thanks so much, you guys. Take care.